Hey, how are you doing? So, what's our joyous dish today? We are going to be making Coronation Quiche. Let me get my eggs and get stuff ready. And I thought it was an appropriate topic since, I'm also going to adjust my light in mid-shot. Yeah, so Coronation Quiche for the 6th of May. What could be more appropriate? But Nigel's Joy style. So stick with us and we're going to do something so delicious, but we're also going to have a little time for joy too. So, let's go! I'm so sorry about the audio in this next clip. I somehow or other managed to record it in mono instead of stereo. There's nothing wrong with your speakers, just please bear with it. Oh, well, Coronation Quiche, and yes, I'm looking up my talking points. The coronation is on the 6th of May, this Saturday, so I thought it was appropriate to do Coronation Quiche. Now, the coronation is going to be a huge event. It's probably a spectacle going to be seen by billions around the world. And coronations are all about change. So I thought I'd talk about how I handled it, a little bit anyway. But what I saw change was, change is challenge. And the changes, the big changes that I'll just bring up today, for example, my mum passing 15 years ago, just heavenly having a meltdown and how we managed that. Now look, I'm not going to get into the specifics of all that today, but just to say that change is challenge. It's a process of letting go, it's a process of really drilling down into the minutiae and seeing what we need to deal with. So there were days I wouldn't want to get out of bed. Intense anxiety, fear, this weight on your shoulders. But to a large extent, you muddle on, you muddle through. And in the upcoming segments, I'll probably talk about that. I'm thinking, what do you think? Put in the comments below, what do you think about having interviews with professionals, with people who've handled it, who have found their joys? Tell me. So, coronation signifies change. And change is an awfully hard thing to go through. Change is challenge. When I was going through a period of realizing that Just Heavenly wasn't the company it used to be and wasn't my main bread and butter anymore, and having to watch it go through a meltdown, it got to a point where I really didn't want to wake up and face it. Eventually I had to, and that was a hard journey, which I will cover at some point. But yeah, eventually I had to, and that's where I learned a couple of things. Change is constant and a challenge. Not only because I like the alliteration, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. And whatever foundational belief you have, whichever God you believe in, or whether or not it's just the universe you believe in, God doesn't give us something we cannot handle, even though it may seem that way at the time. But just keep on going. And this comes back to why I'm talking about this. The coronation isn't just a big spectacle. It covers so much constitutional stuff. This is about the country recognizing King Charles's right to be king and head of state. It also ensconces him in a position of the tapestry that runs the UK. It's huge, and he's still got to balance family, public opinion, being a father, which we can debate whether or not he did well, being a son, mourning the passing of his parents, being a husband, and a whole load of other stuff. I can barely get up sometimes, let alone do what he does. Think about having to think about the continuity of this family for the next 1,000 years. And whatever I may think about the monarchy as an institution, I generally feel he's doing a good job. The PR machine is working well, the royals work hard, and the number of engagements they have a year is actually not easy. And on top of that, reading government document briefings and meeting the Prime Minister every week, all that requires preparation and study. There's a lot going on in the background that we don't know about. So yes, this coronation quiche represents all that and more, and that's why I made it my own, which is what I believe King Charles is doing with the monarchy. He's remaking it in his style. Have fun, enjoy, and just remember to watch to the end to see what it is I added or took away. We'll see. Just remember, change is challenge, and as one wonderfully funny fellow once said, thank you, Russell Peters, you can do it! Cut in cold butter. There is a reason why you cut in cold butter. And if you'd like to know why, hit me up in the comments below. But this is for short crust pastry, so the cold butter serves that purpose as well. Now, also spill some flour. 'Cause, of course, that's what you do. It happens to all of us. And get a digital weighing scale. It makes life so much easier. You just chuck all of it into the food processor bowl without having to use another bowl. Use some vegetable shortening. There's also a reason for that. Again, ask me why. Now, using a food processor makes life a lot easier, but if you don't have one, don't worry. All is not lost. Invest in a pastry cutter. And of course, add in some salt, because salt is life. There's also a reason why we use ice water for short crust pastry. I'll tell you why in a little while. Start the food processor up and pulse it. I pulse it, but I also watch it. And what you want is a sandy sort of texture. It can also be pebbly. This time, my flour dough turned out a little pebbly. That's fine. Just make sure it's well mixed in. And most importantly, the butter has not melted. Yeah, this is good. So, once this has happened, turn on the machine, keep it running, and slowly pour in some of the ice water. Try not to get the ice in there, but you only need a couple of tablespoons really, and once it starts clumping together like that, stop the machine. Sprinkle some flour onto your work surface generously and turn out the dough. It should come out kind of like this. It'll be a bit separated, but don't worry, you can always squeeze it all together. As I said, squeeze it all together. And once it comes together, knead it for about 15 to 20 times. You don't need to do too much. Need to do too much? Get it? Get it? The reason being you don't want a tough dough. If you work it too much of the gluten forms and you get a hard dough. Roll it into a ball and then use some cling film. Come on, come out already. The reason why it's sort of like getting stuck like that is because there's almost no more cling wrap in this roll and it's a bit light, so it doesn't sit properly while I'm pulling out the cling wrap. Anyway, just wrap it together and form it into a disc like I'm doing and chuck it into the fridge. Give it about an hour, and through the magic of TV, here we are. 1 hour later. Sprinkle some flour onto your work surface and slowly turn the dough out onto it. I've taken off my glasses here because, yeah, I was getting slippery and so the glasses kept on falling off my head and my face. Roll out the dough. As you can tell, I am terrible at rolling out dough. But having said that, all is not lost, so don't worry, just keep watching. Here's a handy little tip. Never roll out your dough to the end. Don't let your rolling pin fall off the edge of the dough. You don't want thin edges, it's harder to get it off the surface. So here we are, I'm using a pastry cutter to lift it, and I'm using a 9-inch round tin. Perfectly acceptable. And just transfer it over.
When it's like, you know.
Damn it. Damn it. Don't worry if this happens to you. Happens to the best of us. And the good part about not working the dough too much is this. Once you have it in, you can just press it out. And this also works the dough, so it firms it up a little bit more. That's a good thing. Use a flat bottomed glass and slowly keep on pressing out until it's sort of even. Once you get it worked up along the sides, just use your pastry cutter, cut the edges to make it more even. Don't throw away these bits now, just patch the areas where they need patching. Easy peasy. And it's still really pretty. There it is. Thanks, Crust, for cleaning up my flour mess. Chuck it into the freezer. There's also a reason for that. Turn on your oven, preheat it to 200. And get on with your custard. I'm using a mixture of dairies here. I like whipped cream. I also like creme fraiche only because I didn't have enough whipped cream. But if you can use all whipped cream, you can also use a mixture like I did. Use some fresh milk because you don't want the custard too rich. And then pour it into a big jug like I did here. Here. Crack in some eggs. Now, I also used an egg yolk for extra richness because why not? I also crack my eggs into a separate container because I've had too many instances where I'm cracking in eggs and lo and behold, one is a stinky, rotten mess and I have to throw everything out. To avoid that, do this. On you go to whisking, black pepper, which I think gives it a more floral flavor, and of course, a good pinch of salt. In this case, it was about 3/4 teaspoon. Scrunch up your parchment paper. It makes life a lot easier when putting it into your chilled short crust pastry. We're going to bake this blind now. Ask me why it's called baking blind. Put in some pie weights and do not despair if you haven't got any. Get some peas, get some rice, uncooked rice, and you can use it in there too. And it goes without saying the peas need to be uncooked as well. Grate some cheese. I used 2 types of cheese only because I didn't have enough of one. And by all means use 3. I've also been known to mix in mozzarella and parmesan. And here's my big secret ingredient, bacon. Why? Because bacon is life and I love bacon. After half an hour, take out your pie crust and gently lift it out. Lift out the pie weights. It should look like this, a light golden brown. Now the extra egg white I came from using, just separating 1 egg yolk, is used now to go and paint the bottom. This is to seal up the dough, just in case there are any holes in there. If you're wondering why it's white, I just used the same jug again, so I didn't have to use another jug. The jug that I made the custard with, I mean. Here we go. Always layer your ingredients into the crust. Don't just chuck them all in willy-nilly. I've done 2 layers here, so a good layer of cheese, a good layer of bacon, and the next, of course, is the herbs and the spinach. I've used tarragon. I've used parsley here, I'm sorry. Tarragon wasn't available that day, so I thought, okay, parsley's good too. And instead of cooked spinach, which really takes an extra step, you don't need to do this. I just chopped up raw leaves of spinach and chucked it in. In this case, I'm using a variegated spinach, a purple spinach, because it's available over here and it's quite common in Malaysia. Layer again with the cheese and the bacon, and 1 more layer of spinach. Here we go with the rest of the herbs, and we're done. The layering also gives you a lovely cross section. Give the custard a little bit more of a stir and gently pour it all in. Now don't spill the custard, because if the custard gets in between the crust and the tin, you are going to have a heck of a time trying to get that custard out of that loose bottom tin. Also, the surface was tilting, so I put it on the fork because it was tilting so that the custard wouldn't spill. Here we go. In you go at 175 degrees Celsius for anything up to 35 to 40 minutes. And there's the coronation quiche, fit for a king. I hope His Majesty will give this a go, because really this was rather delicious. And rather beautiful, don't you think? Cut out a slice. Look at that gorgeous cross section. You see, you don't need to cook the spinach. It cooks in the oven. So let's give this a go. All right, coronation quiche, but Nigelsjoys style. Oh my. I'm glad we added the bacon bits. That's all I can say. And I don't think you have to cook the spinach before you put it in. It cooks it as you bake, so no issues. Yummy. Just yummy. Go on, let's toast His Majesty King Charles. Thanks for joining us on this week's Nigelsjoys. Please keep an eye out for future videos, and to that end, do like, click subscribe to this channel, and also the notify bell. That will help the algorithm, and it will also help me grow this channel. Thanks so much. Bye.